The signal and the response. The first anomaly appeared on Dr. Maya Wilson's monitor at 3:27 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The young astrophysicist had been alone in the observation room of the Kuiper Belt Listening Array, watching the usual cosmic static dance across her screens when the pattern emerged, subtle at first, then unmistakable. KBLA Control, I'm picking up something unusual on Array 7, she reported, voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Narrow-band electromagnetic transmission, modulated, non-random sequences repeating approximately every 47 seconds. Confirmed, Dr. Wilson, came the response from her supervisor, Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, his voice thick with sleep. Origin. Maya's fingers flew across her console, triangulating the signal with precision, born from thousands of hours of practice. HD 85512. It's coming from the habitable zone of HD 85512. A signal from Gliese 370. Tanaka's voice lost all traces of drowsiness. That's impossible. The data doesn't lie, sir, Maya replied, already downloading the signal patterns for analysis. And there's more. It's getting stronger. Within 24 hours, the Kuiper Belt Listening Array had confirmed what Maya had discovered. Humanity had received its first verified extraterrestrial transmission. The signal contained mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and eventually, complex data packets that defied immediate understanding. What no one expected was how quickly the message would be decoded. Dr. Eliza Cho, a quantum linguistics specialist who had developed revolutionary translation algorithms, volunteered her expertise. 3 days later, she stood before the hastily assembled KBLA directors, her usually composed demeanor shaken. "It's a distress call," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. "They call themselves the Araxians. Their civilization is under attack by what translates roughly as the Void Eaters, a hostile force that has already destroyed 17 of their colony worlds." The room fell silent as Cho continued. "They've been watching our broadcasts for over a century. They believe humans possess something unique, a particular resilience and adaptive creativity that their species lacks. They're asking for our help." General Marcus Briggs, the military liaison to the KBLA, scoffed. "And how exactly do they expect us to help? We can barely reach Mars." Cho's expression shifted to something between wonder and disbelief. "That's the thing, General. The transmission includes detailed technical specifications, blueprints, if you will, for a propulsion system that would allow us to reach their star system in months, not millennia. They're giving us the technology." Director Pearson asked, incredulous. "Yes," Cho said. "They're desperate." What followed was predictable to anyone familiar with human bureaucracy. The governments of Earth's major powers classified the information immediately. Official statements denied the significance of the signal, calling it an interesting anomaly requiring further study. Behind closed doors, military strategists debated the potential threat. Economists calculated resource requirements, and politicians argued about jurisdiction. But they hadn't counted on Maya Wilson. "They're burying it," she told Cho over an encrypted channel 2 weeks after the discovery. "They're afraid of panic, afraid of the technology, afraid of everything." "What are you suggesting?" Cho asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "The Araxians aren't just reaching out to governments. They're reaching out to humanity. People deserve to know." The leak was meticulously planned. Not to social media, where it could be dismissed as conspiracy theory, but simultaneously to 12 of the world's most respected scientific journals, complete with raw data, translation matrices, and Cho's complete analysis. Within hours, the information spread globally. The world's reaction defied all predictions. Instead of panic, there was determination. Instead of fear, fascination. Hashtags like #AnsworthCall and #AraxianResponse trended worldwide. When governments continued to hesitate, people took matters into their own hands. Dr. Rohan Mehta, founder of Ascendant Space Technologies, held a press conference that changed everything. Standing before the world's media, the usually reserved billionaire made his announcement. If our governments won't answer this call, private industry will. Ascendant is committing its entire orbital manufacturing capacity to building the response vessel. We cannot, we will not, be the species that heard a cry for help across the stars and chose to do nothing. His statement unleashed what would later be called the Great Collaboration. Engineers from competing aerospace companies shared proprietary designs. Retired NASA scientists volunteered alongside their Russian and Chinese counterparts. Quantum computing networks worldwide dedicated processing power to simulating the alien propulsion designs. Governments, faced with this unprecedented global movement, had little choice but to follow their citizens' lead. The United Nations convened an emergency session and established the Araxian Response Initiative, a multinational effort to coordinate humanity's answer to the call from the stars. Construction of the vessel, named Prometheus, began in Earth orbit 90 days after the signal's discovery. The Araxian propulsion technology required exotic materials and manufacturing techniques previously theoretical to human science. Limitations were overcome through human ingenuity. Where direct replication was impossible, creative alternatives were developed. The Araxians were right about us. Maya observed 6 months later, watching from the observation deck, as spacewalking engineers attached the final components to Prometheus's gleaming hull. We are adaptable, creative. The question is whether it will be enough. Cho replied, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the vessel. The Void Eaters have technology far beyond even what the Araxians have shared with us. Then we'll have to be very human about it, Maya said with a grim smile. We'll improvise. Crew selection became another global phenomenon. Rather than traditional astronaut criteria, the mission required specialists in fields ranging from xenobiology to theoretical weapons physics. The final crew of 47 represented 23 nations, their backgrounds as diverse as their expertise. Maya Wilson, whose discovery had started it all, was appointed mission commander. Dr. Cho would serve as communication specialist, and for reasons that surprised everyone, including himself, General Briggs, once the mission's greatest skeptic, was named security chief. I still think this could be walking into a trap, he admitted during the final briefing. But if we're going prepared. The launch day arrived exactly 1 year after the first detection of the Araxian signal. Billions watched worldwide as Prometheus powered up its conventional engines to leave Earth orbit before activating the alien drive system. In mission control, Director Pearson opened a global channel. Prometheus, you are cleared for interstellar launch. Godspeed. Maya took a deep breath, looking around at her crew, scientists and soldiers, theorists and engineers, all united by purpose. Araxians, she transmitted into the depths of space. Humanity has heard your call. We're on our way. Then, to her crew, initiate Araxian drive. The stars blurred as Prometheus leaped forward, carrying humanity's hopes and determination into the unknown. Earth's first interstellar mission had begun, driven not by conquest or exploration, but by the most human of instincts, the desire to help those in need, even across the gulf of stars. The journey and the revelation. The voyage aboard Prometheus quickly proved that theoretical physics and practical experience were different matters entirely. The Araxian drive performed beyond expectations, hurtling the vessel through space at velocities that transformed the starfield into streaks of light. But the human body wasn't designed for such travel. It's not just standard inertial effects. Dr. Nikolai Petrov, the mission's chief physician, reported 3 weeks into the journey. The drive creates localized ripples in space-time. Our inner ears can't process it. The entire crew suffered from what they called void sickness. Disorientation, nausea, and vivid hallucinations. Sleep became nearly impossible. Productivity plummeted. General Briggs found Maya in the observation deck during the artificial night cycle, staring at the distorted starfield. "We can't complete the mission like this," he said without preamble. "Half the crew can barely function." "I know," Maya replied, not taking her eyes from the viewport. "Cho's been working on something with the engineering team. They think they found a solution in the Araxian data we haven't fully translated yet." The solution came from an unexpected source. Buried in the technical specifications were biomedical protocols. The Araxians had anticipated the physiological impact on human bodies. Following their guidance, Dr. Petrov developed neural stabilizers that counteracted the worst effects of the drive. "They really did think of everything," Cho mused as the crew recovered. "They've been studying us for decades, learning our biology, our psychology, our technology. They knew exactly what we'd need." "Which makes me wonder what else they know about us," Briggs countered. "And what they're not telling us." His concerns weren't entirely unfounded. As they approached their destination, Prometheus encountered something unexpected: debris fields of artificial origin scattered across their path. The remnants of spacecraft, unlike any design they recognized, drifting in the void. "Battle damage," Briggs declared after the first EVA retrieval mission. "These weren't accidents. These ships were destroyed by weapons fire." The mood aboard Prometheus darkened. The Araxian distress call had mentioned conflict, but the scope was becoming clearer. They weren't heading toward a skirmish, but the aftermath of a devastating war. When they finally entered the HD 85,512 system, sensors detected activity around the fourth planet, a terrestrial world with oceans and landmasses not unlike Earth. But what orbited it wasn't an Araxian defense fleet. "Those are mining platforms," reported Lieutenant Commander Fatima Al-Sayed, head of astrometrics. "Massive ones. They're extracting something from the planet's crust on an industrial scale." "The Void Eaters?" Maya asked. "Unlikely," Cho replied, studying the transmission logs. The Araxians described the Void Eaters as nomadic, arriving quickly, consuming resources, and moving on. These installations are permanent. As they approached the planet, they received their first direct communication since leaving Earth, a tight beam transmission encoded in the same format as the original distress call. "Earth vessel Prometheus. This is Sentinel Zoral of the Araxian Defense Collective. Approach coordinates being transmitted. Exercise extreme caution. The Harbingers are watching." "Harbingers?" Briggs questioned. "Not Void Eaters." Cho frowned at her translation matrix. "That's definitely what they said." Following the Araxian coordinates, Prometheus entered orbit around the night side of the planet, using its shadow to mask their approach. There, nestled within a mountain range, they found their landing site, a massive facility built into the rock itself, with doors large enough to accommodate their vessel. The landing was tense, with the crew prepared for anything. When the outer doors sealed behind them, and the hangar repressurized, Maya led the first contact team, herself, Cho, Briggs, and Petrov, to meet their hosts. The Araxians were not what they expected. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies were elongated and graceful, covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with their movements. 4 arms emerged from torsos that tapered to serpentine lower bodies, but most striking were their eyes, enormous, multifaceted, and filled with an intelligence that needed no translation. "Commander Wilson," the lead Araxian spoke, its voice processed through a translation device. "I am Sentinel Zoral. You have our eternal gratitude for answering our call." The formal welcomes gave way to urgent briefings. The Araxian situation was far more complex than their distress call had indicated. The Void Eaters were real, but they weren't the immediate threat. "We call them the Harbingers," Zoral explained in the command center deep within the mountain facility. Holographic displays showed massive orbital structures around the planet. They arrived a century ago, claiming to be refugees from the Void Eaters. "We welcomed them, shared our resources, our technology." The Araxian scales darkened to a deep blue, an expression of deep regret, Cho had explained. It was deception. They were not refugees but advanced scouts, studying us, learning our weaknesses. When they had what they needed, more came, not as invaders with weapons, but as partners with contracts, treaties, and technological offerings we couldn't resist. They infiltrated your society, Briggs concluded. Precisely. Within decades, they controlled our resource production, our orbital infrastructure, our defense systems. Now they harvest our world while we hide beneath it. We are, effectively, prisoners on our own planet. But why call us? Maya asked the question that had lingered since Earth. Your technology is still far beyond ours. Zeryl's scales rippled with an emotion the translators couldn't capture. Because of what makes you human. Throughout our surveillance of Earth, we observed something unique, your response to limitations. Holographic displays activated, showing moments from human history. Engineers solving the Apollo 13 crisis, doctors developing vaccines during pandemics, communities rebuilding after natural disasters. When Araxians encounter an insurmountable problem, we calculate, we theorize, we optimize. But within established parameters, humans improvise. You discard parameters. You think sideways. You called us because we're unpredictable, Maya realized. The Harbingers analyze patterns. Their strength is prediction based on established behavior. They cannot comprehend unpredictability. It registers as system error. The plan that evolved over the following days leveraged this uniquely human quality. While the Harbingers possessed superior technology, their systems were predictable, designed to counter expected threats through established protocols. We don't fight their strengths, Briggs explained during the final briefing. We target their assumptions. The operation began with something no advanced civilization would consider, seemingly random, contradictory actions. Small teams deployed throughout the Harbinger network, not to attack, but to introduce subtle anomalies into their systems. A temperature regulator adjusted by 2 degrees here, a minor power fluctuation there. Nothing that would trigger security protocols, but enough to create patterns that made no logical sense. As predicted, the Harbinger's adaptive systems attempted to identify the pattern, the logical explanation for these changes. Finding none, their algorithms dedicated increasingly more resources to analysis, creating processing vulnerabilities throughout their network. They're trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution. Cho observed from the control center, watching as Harbinger systems worldwide diverted resources to pattern recognition. Their entire computational model is based on the assumption that every effect has a logical cause, and we're giving them effects with no logical cause, Maya finished. When the Harbinger's systems reached peak vulnerability, the combined Araxian and human forces launched the real attack, not with weapons, but with a virus designed to exploit the processing gap. It spread through their network, triggering emergency protocols that the Harbingers themselves had established, protocols that commanded their automated systems to power down to prevent catastrophic failures. Throughout the planet, Harbinger installations went dark. Their orbital platforms initiated emergency diagnostic sequences, temporarily suspending operations. For the first time in decades, the Araxians emerged from hiding, reclaiming their surface installations while the enemy was paralyzed. The victory wasn't permanent. The Harbingers would eventually reset their systems and adapt. But it created the window the Araxians needed to implement the second phase of the plan, broadcasting an emergency signal on frequencies the Void Eaters were known to monitor. "You're calling the Void Eaters here?" Maya asked, horrified when she realized what Zeryl intended. "Not to our world," the Araxian clarified. "The signal indicates a Harbinger fleet gathering in the neighboring system, a prize too valuable for the Void Eaters to ignore." "You're setting a trap," Briggs said with newfound respect, "using one enemy against another. A strategy no Araxian would have conceived," Zeryl acknowledged, "but one a human suggested within minutes of learning our situation." As predicted, the Harbinger leadership fled the system upon detecting the Void Eater approach, abandoning their mining operations rather than risk confrontation. The Araxians reclaimed their world not through superior firepower, but through understanding psychology, both their enemies and their allies. 1 month later, Prometheus prepared to return to Earth. The Araxians had upheld their end of the exchange, providing advancements in medicine, sustainable energy, and material science that would transform human civilization. "You know they'll return eventually," Maya said during her final meeting with Zorl. "The Harbingers, maybe even the Void Eaters." "Yes," the Araxian acknowledged. "But we will not face them alone next time. Our species began this as a transaction. Your help in exchange for our technology. We did not anticipate that it would become something more valuable." "An alliance," Maya suggested. "A friendship," Zorl corrected. "Throughout our history, we believed advancement came through logic and order. You have shown us that sometimes salvation comes through chaos and intuition. Our species complement each other in ways neither could have predicted." As Prometheus broke orbit for the journey home, Maya recorded her final log entry. "We came to HD 85,512 expecting to rescue a dying civilization with our technology. Instead, we saved them with our humanity, and perhaps they've saved us too, not just with their advanced science, but by showing us what we've always possessed, but rarely recognized: the power of thinking differently." Earth sent one ship to answer a desperate plea. We return with something far greater, a reminder of what makes us human, and the knowledge that in a vast and dangerous universe, that might be our greatest strength of all. Prometheus streaked across the stars, carrying home a message that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos, not as conquerors or even explorers, but as partners in a greater community, valued for the very qualities that made them uniquely human.